What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And this one I want to talk about what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of tickers out there. I'm going to break down some very important levels on Tesla and talk about the current formation on the chart and some very important levels that we need to watch for as this thing continues. I also want to break down a new very critical level on Tesla that's developed that's going to be very important for it in the future and what you should be watching for in the chart for the rest of the day. But before I break anything down with all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm personally not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks plus a $50 cash reward, and the offer ends in just 3 days. Anyways, now let's talk about the market, how everything's looking. So when it comes to Tesla, I just wanted to mention to everyone, at least in the morning, that we had this rising wedge that was developing, but there wasn't confirmation of it breaking down at the time I was recording it. Then I told you guys to watch this 244 area. If Tesla had broke this 244 resistance to 244.5, this thing could have tried to push all the way up to the 245s and all the way up to 247.5 and possibly even like 250. We could have just saw this thing shoot all the way up to 250 if we broke this key resistance. And instead, we got the rejection. So I talked about the rejection possibility here. I had both of these drawn out, and the rejection is what ended up happening. And I told you if we rejected, we'd likely see Tesla come all the way down to these much lower levels to at least 238 or lower. And that's where Tesla ended up going to. We actually went down just above this demand zone, this historical demand zone, around this 235 area, but super, super close anyways. So we got the rejection on Tesla. It came down, and a lot of that has to do with some negative news and also because of the current levels, because Tesla was at a very critical resistance, which is where it got rejected from historically, right? The algorithm started selling at this level because this was a very historical level. And on top of that, I think they were like trying to hunt for some stops that were like right up here, at least for a lot of shorts before they really brought this thing down. So it was a very clean setup and very, very nice looking ascending wedge, and it played out quite nicely for Tesla so far. But the question is, why did this happen? What's going on with the news? Just as a quick reminder, Tesla is preparing for its first trial involving, the incidents with the FSD and its autopilot. Not a very good piece of news for Tesla in general. So this is making some headlines. There's also other pieces of news involving the Cybertruck. So the news wasn't really that bad overall, but this was something new. And I think that this is playing a role in the negative performance, at least to some extent. Now looking at Tesla, it's starting to cool off just a little bit. And with some negative news coming out, this is just expected, nothing out of the ordinary. So with Tesla dropping like this, it also formed a bearish divergence, getting the drop. I just want to mention that we're currently testing this 238 zone on Tesla. Breaking below this, it has the potential to come all the way down to like the 235s again. Not looking that great, and it's pretty much just range bound for the most part. It was just stuck between 240 and about 235 for almost the entire day, going back and forth and back and forth. If it comes below like 238, for instance, then we have this range between 238 and about 235. Nothing too significant, nothing too exciting so far, and I think it's just going to remain range bound for the rest of the day. But the thing is, and the way the whole market moves could also dictate Tesla, and that's why I want to talk about Apple and just a couple of other things. So when it comes to Apple, Apple is very much range bound as well, very boring, if anything. When you look at the levels, I was telling you guys about 180 as resistance, and below that we had 178.5. These are the levels I had marked on Apple stock, and notice what this thing did. Okay, it did not give us any good answers. We had a possible cup and handle like formation, but here's the problem. We need to see this thing break and hold 180 for this to push the market even higher. And if you want to be a big bear, you want to see Apple break below 178.5 and start pushing downwards towards like 177.5 or even lower levels like that. And instead, it was just stuck between these levels all day, back and forth and back and forth. That's why we didn't really see much of a move on SPY. It was just range bound for most of the day in a $2 range, 2 point range. Very, very boring. And really, my analysis is just the same for Apple. I mean, if Apple comes down, we have support right here, this demand that's been stuck here for the last few days. If it breaks below this thing can start sinking lower. If it were to sink like this would slow the whole market down, including Tesla. We have this imbalance down here around like 177. That would sink the market down if we break below 178.5. And if this thing managed to hold above 180 and start pushing, then that could have also pumped the markets. There's a possible cup and handle, but I'm not really fixated on anything until we see which way this thing breaks. So far, it's kind of stuck, and the market is just following this trend. Why? Because if you look at SPY, also Nvidia, but SPY right now, right, SPY is doing the same thing. So on SPY, okay, you could see that we have this possible head and shoulders that developed on it. right? This head and shoulders is looking very clean. However, here's the thing, there's no confirmation of this playing out, and there's no confirmation of this being invalidated. So it hasn't been invalidated. It is still technically possible. The right shoulder is still real, it's still forming. But here's the thing, there's also no confirmation that we're actually breaking down just yet because of the head and shoulders. We have to wait and see if we get the break. And I'm watching this in an ascending wedge right now. It's forming on SPY so far. It hasn't truly broken the market structure. As of right now, it's been making higher highs and higher lows, at least for the most part until just recently. So it's getting very tight. We'll see which way it breaks. If it does get a break below this range, then things could slow down. It has been stuck between the 441 zone, very close to 441 as support, and 443, that zone just above that as its resistance, going back and forth for the entire day, just like Apple, not really doing much. If we get a break below 440 and starts sinking, we're going to see this thing come all the way down to 438 or lower, in my opinion. But for now, its range bound is kind of stuck, so we just have to watch it. We have to be very patient, right? One of the things I learned from one of the best traders I've ever met was when you are trading, you want the charts to tell you what's going to happen. I know that sounds very, very obvious and very easy, but a lot of people tend to trivialize this. They tend to think that they know exactly what's about to happen. They're so confident and they start making moves before any confirmation happens. And that's the reason why I'm telling you, you got to wait and see, do we truly get this break if you want to short this very hard and expect a big break to the downside? So far, it has not done that. So I'm just being very patient. I'm being very cautious when it comes to the moves I'm trying to make. And going forward, if we do get a break on SPY and SPX and Apple and the market starts sinking, right, Tesla is going to be impacted by that. That's why I talk about the whole market. You can't just talk about Tesla on its own. You have to talk about the whole market. The whole market impacts it. This head and shoulders is valid so far. It's still real. There's nothing like invalidating this. And it could most definitely play out. It still could play out, but we just have to wait and see once we get the break for this to play out. And if that happens, the market could start sinking a little bit lower. Now, the QQQ has a very similar setup. We have a head and shoulders on the QQQ, and we actually failed to break and hold above 367, which is a good sign for the bears. However, look at the market structure. We technically have higher lows that were being made, right? This low right here was higher. This is a higher low. This is a higher low. So the structure has not broken. And we didn't really get this like clean break to the downside just yet. We also didn't get a clean break to the upside. Just like SPY, just like Apple, the QQQ, the Nasdaq is just range bound, stuck between 364 and 367, back and forth and back and forth. I think the range is a little bit nicer on the QQQ than SPY, in my opinion, but overall, we have this potential wedge that formed. It's just stuck, not really doing much. We're going to be watching to see which way it breaks. If we get the break to the downside below 365 this time around, we're going to be watching 364. That's going to be our next critical level. We're going to be watching for a change in market structure. If we start breaking below the 364s, it's going to start sinking all the way down to 362, in my opinion. And if it somehow gets a break to the upside, just hypothetically, we're going to be watching this ascending wedge that's very, very, it's not as tight as SPY's, but it still is existent. And then as it tries to form, as this thing tries to like uptrend, you're going to be watching the resistance around this 367 area. If it breaks that, 368 is the next level. And if it gets above that, I think it's going to push up to 370. So it's just stuck right now, very boring, not really doing anything. And that's part of why Tesla's also like moving the way it is. Now, Tesla's a little bit weaker than some stocks out there, a little bit weak, but still, I mean, it's just range bound right now. It's kind of stuck between 235 and like 238. So make sure you just watch that range carefully and just see what Tesla does. Not a whole lot is going on. We did call out this potential drop at this critical level if it got a rejection of 244, and that is what happened. If it broke it, it could have seen a mini squeeze, but it ended up failing to do so. So it's not a good sign. Last but not least, I just want to talk about Nvidia before I end the video. Nvidia, not looking bad whatsoever. If you look at Nvidia, there's something good that happened to it. So for the bulls, what's good about it would be the fact that there's a potential change in market structure that is developing, because when you look at this, look at what this thing was doing. We made this low here, we went up, a new low, went up, a new low, a new low, and the list goes on. Now we made another low right here technically, but you could see this wick formed on the 30 minutes time frame. And with this wick forming, you can see we have this demand zone right here on Nvidia around this 450 zone. and that has been acting as a base for it. It tried to bounce off that, and we actually broke the high right here that was stuck at 465. I told you guys in my morning video I was hoping for like 470 today. We actually touched 470 or came very close to it. And now we're going to be watching to see if this thing can establish a higher low and start pushing to the upside. Because if it does break 470, maybe by tomorrow or so, there could be an inverse head and shoulders, but we need to wait and see if we can get that breakout. Could we see this thing form an inverse head and shoulders? Could we see this thing establish a higher low? We have to wait and see. If Nvidia sinks down back to like 460 and it breaks, we're going to be watching this demand zone between this. It's technically around like, it's basically very close to 450, basically around that range. If it breaks below that, 446 is going to be a key level, because if that fails us, then we have that gap all the way down to like the 430s. So we're going to be watching. I also called out the possibility of a head and shoulders that could be forming on Nvidia. Like a left shoulder is here, right? The head could be here, and then a right shoulder could be forming right here. If we're forming a right shoulder, we'd want to see this thing push up a little bit and then watch the resistance right here to see if we get this rejection or not. So, there's a whole lot that could be going on with it. Let me just mention that for now, I just want to be as patient as possible. It's just kind of stuck right now, testing this previous resistance becoming support around this like 465 area. We're going to be watching 465 as of right now as support. Watch 470 as resistance and 475. And then if 465 breaks, then there's 460 technically, and below that, we have the demand zone. So watch those levels on Nvidia. It's very much just range bound, but there is a chance, and a good chance, it's going to change its structure by changing the way it's moving. It's going to try to make a higher low. Let's hope it makes a higher low, and then this thing could start uptrending just a little bit more, at least for the time being. Now, if the whole market starts sinking very hard with the head and shoulders on SPY and the QQQ, then Nvidia could still slow down. Be open to that possibility. But for now, just watch these levels, watch these ranges so far, especially on Tesla, and just be patient and do what you have to do. All right. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, everyone. These are some very, very critical levels. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you, and peace out.